I didn't expect her to remember me. People don't usually. I'm the kind of guy who blends into the background, hoodie, headphones, the one who orders the same thing every time and pretends it's a choice. But when I pushed open the cafe door that morning, shaking the rain from my sleeves, she looked up from behind the counter like she had been waiting for someone, and her face softened just a little. "There you are," she said. "Not sir. Not hi. Just, there you are." Her name was Mira. Mid-40s, maybe older. A streak of silver cutting through her hair in a way that didn't look aged, just earned. I'd seen her working here for months. She wasn't loud like the others. She moved with this quiet certainty, like someone who had once lived loudly and then decided silence felt more honest. "You want the usual?" she asked, already reaching for the thermos behind her. She remembered. I nodded. "Yeah. Thanks." My voice cracked a bit. I hoped she didn't notice, but she did. She always did. She filled the cup slowly, like the pauses mattered. Her eyes flicked up, then away, then back again, an almost smile forming and retreating. When she handed me the cup, her fingers brushed mine barely. A static dry touch that felt like it reached deeper than it should have. "You were late today," she said. I shrugged. "Couldn't get out of bed." She didn't laugh. She just studied me for a second, the way people look when they're trying to decide if they should ask something more personal. She didn't. But her hand tightened around the counter edge afterward. I moved to my usual seat by the window. Rain slid down the glass in a slow rhythm. I pulled out my phone, typed out a message to nobody in particular. "You up?" Then deleted it before I finished the question mark. I always did that. Half thoughts. Half wants. From my seat, I could see her wiping the same corner of the counter over and over, pretending not to glance in my direction. I pretended not to notice. A few minutes later, she brought over a napkin dispenser, even though mine was full. "Something to do, I guess." "Busy day?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not really." "You?" "Not really," she echoed, and for a moment, we were just two people hiding the same kind of quiet. I flicked my eyes toward her hands, small, steady, a faint scar running across one knuckle. She noticed me noticing and pulled her sleeve down, not embarrassed, just guarded. Like she hadn't meant to let anything show. "Your coffee's getting cold," she said softly. "Yeah." We both knew I wasn't drinking it. She stood there like she wanted to say something else, then stepped back. "If you need anything, just wave." I nodded. She walked away, but she kept turning slightly, as if making sure I hadn't disappeared. The rain eased. The shop emptied out. My cup was still untouched, lukewarm by now. I folded the edge of my napkin into small, uneven squares. Habit. Nerves. Something in between. When I finally got up to leave, she met me halfway. "Hey," she said quietly. "You look better today. A little more, here." "Here?" She tapped her chest. "Alive." I didn't know what to say. She seemed to regret saying it the moment the word left her mouth, looking away with a faint, self-conscious smile. I turned toward the door. Then, her voice softer. "Text me when you get home. Just so I know you did." I looked back. "I don't have your number," I said. She slid a small piece of paper across the counter. The handwriting shook a little. "You do now." And somehow, the rain felt different as I stepped outside, lighter, like the day had just opened a door I didn't know was there. I didn't text her right away. I told myself I was busy, or tired, or that it was strange for a 20-something to text a woman who had probably lived more life than I'd managed to imagine. But the truth was simpler. My thumb hovered over her number for a long time, and I didn't know what version of myself would show up if she answered. I walked to the cafe the next morning slower than usual. The air was sharp, almost metallic. When I stepped in, she looked up immediately. Not surprised, just relieved in a quiet, private way. "You made it home," she said. "Yeah." I lifted my phone a little. "Sorry." I forgot to text. Her mouth pulled into a small, crooked smile that didn't reach her eyes. It's okay. You did now. She poured my coffee without asking. Her hand shook when she set it down. Only once, but I saw it. She tucked her hair behind her ear like she wished she could tuck the moment away too. You sleep all right? She asked. Not really. Me either. She said it like an admission. Not flirtation. Not sympathy. More like she was handing me a loose thread of herself, and didn't know if I'd pull. The cafe was slow, so she came around the counter to fix the wobbly chair near me. I didn't need it fixed, but I lifted my feet anyway, watching her crouch down, sleeves pushed up, revealing that same faint scar. How'd you get that? I asked. She glanced at it, surprised I noticed. Burned myself cooking. Years ago. When my son was little. The word son landed between us, soft but solid. Oh, I said. Yeah. He's 22 now. She paused, almost bracing for my reaction. Your age. I tried to act unaffected, but something tightened in my chest. A reminder of the distance she walked in life that I hadn't yet reached. A reminder of what made this, whatever it was, risky. She stood, wiping her hands on her apron. He lives with his dad. You know how divorces go. She said the last part lightly, but her eyes dipped, the way people do when they're remembering something they'll never fully say out loud. I'm sorry, I murmured. Don't be. It was a long time ago. She forced a smile. Long enough to joke about, too recently to actually be funny. I laughed quietly. She did too, a small, unexpected sound. She made us tea, her idea, not mine. She set the extra cup in front of me, sat opposite, and for a moment we just breathed in the steam. The silence was comfortable until it wasn't. You shouldn't look at me like that, she said suddenly. Like what? She didn't answer. She just stared into her cup, thumb tracing the rim, trying to disguise the tremor in her hands. We talked about little things after that. Weather. Books she kept meaning to finish. A video I was editing. She listened too closely. I watched her too long. Every harmless thing felt threaded with something we weren't naming. When I got up to leave, she reached out, instinctively, reflexively, and brushed a stray thread from my sleeve. The touch was nothing. And somehow everything. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. I'd think later. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. I didn't go to the cafe the next morning. Not because I didn't want to. Because I wanted to too much. I told myself it would give things space, settle whatever had started forming between those silences and half-smiles. I made coffee at home, burned it, threw it out. I paced. Checked my phone. Put it down. Picked it back up. By noon I caved. When I walked in, Myra's face changed, relief first, then something tighter, like the weight of the hours I'd been gone had finally shown its shape. You're late, she said. You said that last time. Yeah, well. She wiped her hands on her apron, avoiding my eyes. I notice. I sat in my usual spot. She didn't bring the coffee. She stayed behind the counter, rearranging pastry trays that didn't need rearranging. When she finally brought my cup over, she set it down a little too quickly. You okay? I asked. She exhaled softly. I thought maybe yesterday was a lot. It wasn't. Maybe not for you. There was nothing defensive in her tone, just truth, exposed and unguarded. She looked out the window instead of at me, as if the street had the courage she lacked at that moment. Before I could say anything, the door chimed. A woman around her age stepped in, shaking umbrella water onto the floor. Mira? You're actually working mornings again? The woman teased. Mira stiffened. Just covering. The woman's eyes flicked to me. New customer? Mira hesitated. He's here a lot. Something about the way she said it, soft, careful, felt like a secret held in cupped hands. Her friend raised an eyebrow, not unkindly. Well, I'll leave you to it. She ordered quickly and retreated to the far corner. But she kept glancing up, curiosity written across her face. Mira saw it. Her shoulders tightened. She sat across from me again but kept her hands folded tightly in her lap. She thinks something's going on, I whispered. Mira swallowed. Is something going on? I didn't answer right away. My mind offered half-thoughts, unfinished possibilities. I like being around you. I don't want to mess this up. I don't know what this even is. Instead, I said, do you want there to be? Her breath hitched, not dramatically, just enough that I noticed the smallest shift in her throat. I shouldn't, she said. That's not what I asked. She finally met my eyes, and there was so much in that look, fear, longing, the quiet ache of someone who had learned to expect disappointment before it arrived. Her friend called out from across the room. Mira? Can you help me a sec? The moment collapsed. Mira stood quickly, wiping imaginary crumbs from the table. Don't wait for me, she murmured before walking away. I watched her help her friend, smiling politely, completely different from the woman who had nearly asked me to stay. When the friend left, Mira returned, but she didn't sit. She stood close, too close, and spoke quietly. I don't know what you're trying to do to me, she said, voice trembling at its edges. But I feel it. And I'm scared of it. I should have stepped back. I didn't. She didn't either. Her hand brushed the table, inching toward mine, stopping a breath away. Close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off her skin. Mira, I whispered. She lipped up, lips parting just slightly. And then, she pulled her hand back, fast, as if she touched something hot. We can't, she murmured. But the way she said it. It felt like almost. Like a line we nearly crossed and would think about all night. I found her outside the cafe after closing. Not on purpose, at least that's what I told myself. I had been walking, circling the block, telling my body to go home while my feet kept choosing the long way around. She was sitting on the short brick ledge near the alley, apron folded beside her, hair slightly undone from the long shift. She looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before, like she'd spent the whole day holding something at arm's length. You shouldn't be here this late, she said when she noticed me. She tried to sound firm. It came out soft. You either, I replied. She gave a faint laugh, but it died quickly. She looked down at her hands, thumb tracing the same old scar. Always the scar. Did your friend say something? I asked. She didn't have to. There was no accusation in her voice, just a quiet resignation, the kind that forms when someone has convinced themselves they already know the ending. We sat in silence for a while. A car passed. Somewhere far off, a dog barked. The air cooled, brushing against our sleeves. She didn't move her arm away when mine got close. You avoided me today, she said at last. I didn't avoid you. You did. It's okay. It scared me, too. That word hung between us, scared, and neither of us tried to soften it. She took a slow breath. I keep thinking I've already lived the part of my life where anything new can happen. And then you walk in with that half-awake look and your ridiculous hoodies, and suddenly I'm... She stopped. Started again. Suddenly I'm looking forward to things I shouldn't. She rubbed her forehead with the back of her hand, embarrassed by how much she'd already said. I don't want to make things complicated for you, she added, quieter. You're young. You're supposed to fall for someone who doesn't have grocery lists on her phone and a son older than half your friends. Maybe I'm just supposed to fall for someone who sees me, I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes snapped to mine, surprised, raw, unguarded. That's not fair, she whispered. Maybe. But it's true. She shifted, turning her body slightly toward me. That tiny movement changed everything, like a door nudging open without meaning to. I don't know what you want from me, she said. I opened my mouth, then closed it. The truth sat in my throat but wouldn't come out. She watched the struggle. That's what scares me, she murmured. I don't know what I'd do if you said the wrong thing. Or the right one. A gust of wind caught her hair. Without thinking, I reached out to fix a loose strand behind her ear. My hand hovered. I didn't touch her. Not really. But she froze anyway, breath catching, eyes flicking to my barely raised fingers. "Don't," she whispered. She didn't pull away. I let my hand fall, slow, like lowering something fragile. "Mira, please," she said, voice cracking just enough to hear. "Don't say it. Not yet. I'm not ready to hear myself want it." She looked at me then, full, open, terrified, and for a moment I felt the world narrow to just that shared breath between us. One more inch. One more word. And everything would change. But she looked away first. "Tell me," she whispered, eyes fixed on the pavement. "If you weren't afraid, what would you do right now?" She didn't look up. And I didn't answer. Not out loud. She wasn't at the cafe the next morning. No note on the counter. No apron hanging on the hook. Just a new barista who smiled too much and didn't know how to steam milk without drowning it. "She's off for a few days," he said when I asked. "Family stuff, I think." Family stuff. The words landed wrong, too vague, too easy. Mira never took time off. She once worked through a sprained wrist because the morning rush needed a steady hand. I sat anyway, even though the place felt different without her quiet orbit. I kept glancing at the counter like she might appear in the doorway, brushing rain off her coat, muttering something about traffic. She didn't. I typed her a message, "Hey. Everything okay?" Then deleted it. Typed again, "Do you need anything?" Deleted it. In the end, I sent nothing. Not out of pride, just fear of pressing something she wasn't ready to open. By noon, I walked past the cafe again. Then again at 3. Then again close to closing, like maybe she'd come in for something she forgot. Nothing. The next morning, I tried again, even earlier this time. When I turned the corner, I saw her, standing just outside the cafe door, hands shaking as she tried to work the key into the lock. "Mira?" She flinched, as if my voice had touched a bruise. "Oh," she murmured. "You're here. You weren't yesterday." "I know." She didn't explain. She didn't smile either. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, her eyes lined with a tiredness that felt heavier than lack of sleep. She kept her body angled slightly away from me, like she was afraid of being read too quickly. "Everything okay?" I asked. She hesitated. "My ex called." I waited. "My son, he wants to move back with me for a while." She forced a thin laugh. "Apparently, I'm still the stable one." Something in her tone wavered, relief mixed with dread. "I didn't know he'd reached out," I said. "You weren't supposed to know." She swallowed. "No one knows. Not yet." A car honked somewhere down the street. She didn't react. "You don't have to pull away," I said quietly. "I'm not pulling away." But she was. Every inch of her said it, the closed shoulders, the clipped tone, the way she kept her hands buried in her coat pockets so they wouldn't accidentally find mine. "This is complicated," she continued. "I wasn't thinking clearly the other night." "I was. That's the problem." She looked at me then, and for a second, something broke open, regret, longing, fear of wanting too much. It all flickered across her features before she forced them still. "You should take a step back," she whispered. "I don't want to." "You might have to." She unlocked the door, stepped inside, but didn't hold it open for me. Not in a rude way. Just intentional. A line drawn with trembling hands. I took one step forward. Stopped myself. She didn't look back. Inside, someone turned on the lights. The room brightened, but the space between us didn't. I typed her a message again, just her name this time. "Mira," then watched the blinking cursor, waiting for the rest of the sentence to arrive. It never did. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. I didn't send the message. And her seat behind the counter stayed empty, even when she finally returned to fill it. 2 days passed before I saw her again. Not at the cafe. At the small park behind it, the one with the chipped green benches and the single flickering street lamp. She was sitting there after sunset, wrapped in her coat, staring at the empty swing set like she was trying to replay a childhood she never talked about. Her hands were folded tightly on her lap. The posture of someone bracing for impact. I almost turned around. Almost let her sit with her thoughts alone. Almost protected myself from whatever truth she'd been building in the silence. But almost had been running the whole story, and I was tired of it. I walked over and sat on the other end of the bench. Not close. Not far. She didn't look at me. "You weren't supposed to find me," she said. "You weren't exactly hiding." "I was trying." She exhaled, long and shaky. "I didn't want to make this harder." "For who?" She didn't answer. She tucked a stray hair behind her ear, hands trembling more than she wanted me to see. We sat there, not touching, not talking. A quiet so dense it felt like it had its own heartbeat. Finally she said, "My son is coming next week." I figured. "He doesn't know about this." A faint, bitter laugh. "I don't even know what this is." I let the words settle. Let them echo. "You pulled away," I said. "I need to know why." She looked down at her hands, always her hands, and pressed her thumbs hard into her palm. "Because you're young," she said, voice cracking at the edges. "Because you still have choices. Because if this goes wrong, you lose nothing. And I lose." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. I leaned forward slightly. "You don't lose me." She flinched, not from the words, but from what they meant. "You can't say that," she whispered. "I just did." She shook her head. "You don't know what it costs for me to want something at this age. To want you. It feels..." She swallowed. "It feels irresponsible." "Wanting something isn't irresponsible," I said. "It is when you're my age," she whispered. "It is when you're afraid of needing someone who might wake up one day and realize he shouldn't be here." I didn't know how to answer that without hurting her or lying to myself. So I said nothing. I let the silence speak the truth she was too scared to look at. I cared. Maybe too much. A cold breeze swept across the park. She shivered. I didn't reach out, not yet, but I angled closer, letting the space between us shrink just enough to feel intentional. She finally looked at me, eyes glossed with unshed tears. "I'm tired of being careful," she said softly. "I'm tired of pretending I don't wait for you to walk through that door every morning." She covered her mouth with her hand, as if the words had escaped before she could stop them. I moved closer slowly, giving her every chance to step back. She didn't. "Mira," I said gently. "Just tell me what you want me to do." Her breath trembled. She lowered her hand. "Stay," she whispered. "Just stay with me a little." So I did. No kiss. No promises. Just two people leaning toward each other in the dim park light, finally letting the weight of everything between them rest in the open. After a long moment, she exhaled, eyes closing. "Okay," she murmured. And for now, that was enough. Time didn't fix everything. It just softened the edges. Weeks passed in a slow, almost unnoticed way, like pages turning when you're too tired to read but too awake to sleep. They weren't together every day, not even every other day. But the gaps didn't feel like absences anymore. Just breathing space. They found a rhythm without trying to. He still arrived at the park early, 8:47 a.m., out of habit, not hope. She still showed up 10 minutes late, pretending she wasn't looking for him, but always spotting him instantly. Sometimes they sat on the same bench. Sometimes on opposite ones. Depends on the morning. Depends on how honest they felt capable of being. But the tension, the sharp, breathless kind, had dissolved. Not entirely, but enough to let them sit closer than they used to. Enough for her to lean her shoulder against his for a few seconds before straightening again. Enough for him to ask if she slept, even when he already knew she didn't. One morning, she brought tea. Not his kind, hers. Jasmine, too sweet for him. She placed the cup beside him without a word. He took it anyway. Drank it anyway. Grimaced once, quietly. She noticed. Smirked. Said nothing. That became their language. Small offerings. Small admissions. No grand speeches. Life outside kept happening, as life always does. She started sleeping a little earlier. He stopped checking the bench every time he walked by. They didn't make promises. They didn't write rules. They just showed up. And the showing up was enough. When they did talk, it was lighter. Not empty, just lighter. She told him about the coworker who microwaved fish. He told her about the neighbor who fed stray cats like it was a full-time job. They laughed softly, like people who'd learned the hard way to hold joy with both hands. But there were still heavier moments too. The ones when she'd stare at her hands for too long. Or he'd lose his words halfway through a sentence, and just shake his head. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was permission. A place to rest. One evening, unusual for them, they met after sunset. Not planned. They just ended up walking the same street at the same time. She looked tired. He looked worried. They stood there, under the soft glow of a street lamp flickering like it was thinking. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. Too quickly. He didn't push. She didn't pretend. They walked together, slow, their steps naturally sinking. At her door, she hesitated, just for a breath. Then she reached out, fingers brushing his wrist. Not grabbing. Not holding. Just acknowledging. "Thank you," she murmured. "For what?" A tiny shrug. "For being here." Still. He didn't answer. Just gave a small, barely there smile, the kind she'd once mistaken for distance but now recognized as softness. They didn't need more. Because this quiet, steady thing, was their version of love. Not dramatic. Not poetic. Just real. Earned. Held gently. Later, when he walked home, he realized something. He didn't feel lost anymore. Just found enough. And in the morning, at 8:47 a.m., they were both already on the bench. Not planned. Not discussed. Just understood. A moment only they would ever understand. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?